Welcome back to another episode. Today we are doing a coaching call with one of my Better Collective members, Jessica Hoddle. She has been on the podcast before. I'll make sure and link to that in the show notes so you can go listen to that if you haven't already. But thanks for being here, Jessica.
Oh, I'm so glad to be back. So glad.
Yes, of course. So this little coaching call, this is basically where I just let you ask questions and I try and give good answers. So
basically I'm running the show.
Basically, you're in charge. You're in charge.
Okay. All right.
So what you got?
All right. I want to know, you know that I've been trying to do a lot of like SEO work and working on my website and getting those green bubbles. So for somebody that updates their SEO and has cross links, trying to do the meta description and getting their focus keyword and all that stuff, what kind of, outcome or how many months, like a quarter, 3 months, like how long should we wait or expect to know if it worked? Does that make sense? So where we don't have to start like, okay, in 3 months, if you haven't seen this increase, then you might need to go back and do this.
That is a difficult question because Google has their own little algorithm and nothing is like, okay, it's like the 3 months, now it's been indexed, rated, like whatever, because things can fluctuate in the rankings literally day by day. Like I have a tool that I use to track where I rank on certain keywords, and I literally get an email. I don't think it's an automatic like daily email. I think it's only if there's an update, but like this week, it's Wednesday and I've already gotten 2 or 3 emails this week where it's like, you went up on this keyword and down on this keyword, like for this blog post or this page or whatever. So like, that's how much things fluctuate. And these are posts that are 6+ months old.
So what are you using then for this document to tell you how good you're doing?
So the tool that I use is called SERP Watch. So SERP, S-E-R-P.
Why does everything in the tech industry have the absolutely weirdest names? Do you ever notice that?
Yeah, well, because SERP is an SEO like term.
So SERP, how do you spell it?
SERP. And then watch.io is their website. And there are other ones, like there's SERP Robot. There is, if you pay for Ahrefs, which is, I think that's how you say the Ahrefs, they have a keyword tracker also that I'm pretty sure you have to pay for though. So there's different ones. There's even more than those 3, but just to get you started. So that can help you kind of track, and it can even like in SERP Watch, like I can put in, like web design or whatever, and it can tell me like you're not ranking.
Just don't even try.
You're not showing up. You're not in Google for this. Sorry.
No, when you say keyword, so I know you do a lot of YouTube, which you're excellent at. So when you're saying keywords ranking, is that typically for your blog that you rank with the keywords, or is that more YouTube?
So this for SERP Watch, which now just sounds funny. I'm like saying it so many times. But for
I think you said soup. I was like, what is this? Okay.
For SERP Watch, it can only track your website. It can't track YouTube. There might be YouTube tools out there. Now that I say that, I'm like, oh, maybe I should go watch or go see if there is one.
Yeah.
But it's just for your website. But because I put all my YouTube videos on my website.
That's true.
Theoretically, if I have like if I have like a YouTube video that's on my site that's like how to set up WordPress, I could then in SERP Watch put, okay, I want to see how I'm tracking for how to set up WordPress, which I guarantee they would be like, it's not happening. Oversaturated.
And when you say keywords, is that just keywords specifically in the copy itself and with the SEO little box at the end? Or when you're saying keywords, what are you referencing?
Like the keywords that I'm putting into
okay. from your blog, there's keywords. And then from your blog, SERP Watch is tracking those keywords, or are you putting keywords into SERP Watch and
You
it's
have
saying,
you have to tell SERP Watch, like,
okay,
how am I ranking for this specific word? Now, for things like the Ahrefs site, that can tell you just like, it'll pull the full list of like what you're showing up in Google for. With what SERP Watch is doing is literally tracking for you, like your fluctuations.
okay.
So like you would
according to the keywords that I'm giving it, according to what's on my website.
Well, not even like, I mean, I could even just put in like cupcakes, like, and they would be like, no, not ranking for this. Like,
yeah,
so just give it a list of keywords and key phrases, and it'll tell you if you're ranking, if you are, where you're ranking, and then if that goes up or down for those keywords.
Okay.
Go back to your original question.
I'm sorry, did I distract you?
No. Well, I went down the rabbit hole of, because I was like, SERP Watch, because things fluctuate so much. I would give it at the very least 3 months, but I would give it at least 6 months.
Okay.
Like, it can take a while to show up. Like, it just, again, their algorithm and whatnot. Like, I was running an audit on the Ahrefs site, and it gives me all this information about links and backlinks and domains and all this stuff. And it was, like on most of my clients' site, in the footer, it says like designed by Jess. And there was a site that went live in like 2017, and it said like found by Google in 2019. And I was like, excuse me? And that's not saying the site itself. It's saying it found that link to my site, to be clear. It wasn't saying it found their site. It was saying it found that link to my site. So like, I'm like, wait, what? That took so long to find a link to my site. So like, it just takes time for that. So I would say give it at least 6 months to see how it's doing.
And with, say, organic reach. So say I get 75 right now, my users are low, 75 people find, through organic search. What would be a good kind of percent? Would it be like 25? Like what kind of, I know it can vary, of course, but we know like bounce rates, right? Like it could be between 60 or 50, like these different percents. What does it look like then for the SEO? What kind of increase could you see with those changes? Is there like, if somebody, we'll just make an even number, like 100, would it be like a 50? So they could go to like almost double, or is there any kind of gauge?
I haven't really seen anybody talk about a gauge on that, because it would totally depend on like what's happening in the world. Like,
yeah, that's true.
What's trending, what's like new and hip, and what are people searching, like, so I think it's kind of like before the pandemic, like Zoom was like, yeah, sure. Like people know Zoom and whatever. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, everybody knows Zoom now.
Yeah.
Like,
true.
So like that is trending a lot more. And like, I had videos on my YouTube channel about like streaming, like Facebook Live and stuff, which a lot of churches had to do and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That video was 2 or 3 years old, and it saw a jump in views just because it had those keywords. So like, you never know when something will spike because of an event, or maybe you get a huge press feature, so then all your stuff spikes. Like there's just so many factors. So that makes it hard to kind of estimate like what kind of surge you could see.
Well, I guess as long as the number is going up, kind of, even if it totters a little bit, I guess as long as it's going up, you're doing something right.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
yes.
There you go. Anybody wants to know, as long as you're improving, because I noticed I only really focused it on, I would say in October, where I was like, okay, I need to do like some SEO stuff. And of course it's only been, maybe a couple of weeks since then. And just kind of like, I think I toggle a little bit. And as long as I'm like, okay, as long as I'm kind of going up, if I'm staying the same, then obviously nothing's working. So.
Right. So I would, yes. And I would definitely it's normal for your traffic to like flatten out for a little while. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's not working. It may be just that the new content you're producing or putting out there may not be helping you drive more traffic. And I mean, yes, if you did update SEO and it's not bringing in more traffic, again, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks is not a great, like you definitely need more time than that. But if you are seeing like over 6 months, like you're not increasing traffic at all, then okay, like we might need to look at something. But then but then that's where I would look more at getting more press and features, maybe coming out with more niche content instead of like, I don't want to say it's just general content, but like really niche content. Like I was talking earlier today with one of the other Better Collective members, and she is not ranking at all for like her really like main keyword, which is like the whole focus of her business.
Yeah.
And she was like, what do I do? And she has plenty of content around that main topic. But when I was looking through it, I was like, I think you have an opportunity for more really, really niche content, like really niche ideas. So she does like classroom organization. And I was like, you should do some, she has like, like organizing your desk, organizing your computer, like stuff like that. I was like, you should do really specific things like how to organize like the headphones in your classroom, like because a lot of students have headphones and like when they use the iPads and laptops. I was like, get like really, really specific. And so I think that might be something else you could think about too, is if there's like any really, really niche topics that you could work on. And honestly, something else you could do is even like, I know you mostly podcast. You don't blog anymore, right? You just podcast?
Yeah, I just podcast. Yeah.
So you could consider, if you're doing like keyword research or you find a topic that like is bringing you more traffic, you could just put out a blog post. It's not that you even have to market it. Like I did a blog post last year, didn't tell anybody about it. Just didn't like, hey guys, I wrote like a blog post for the first time in 4 years, because now I just YouTube and podcast. I just put it up on my site strictly for the sake of SEO to see if it would work. And now it ranks number 1 for that keyword and brings in a decent amount of traffic.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't blog, but it was a really quick blog. Again, I put it on Pinterest, I think, but like I didn't really draw much attention to it. It was just like, we'll see if this helps my SEO, and it did.
So but you have a pretty big following on Pinterest too, right?
I do.
Yeah.
So that does,
and that's great for search engine.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it is.
Well, that was a lot of SEO. That was
a lot of SEO talk. I loved it. Did you have any other questions?
I guess these two could maybe go together. What do you think most people miss focusing on when it comes to a podcast? And what's your favorite way to promote a podcast or to grow a podcast?
Oh, I like those.
Those are kind of 3 questions, but they can kind of go together.
Yeah.
Under the same category.
So I think one thing that people miss on when they're running a podcast is like, what is the end goal of the podcast? And I think, yes, in general, people are like, to like promote my business.
Yeah.
But like specifically, what do you want to drive people to? And not just like per episode, not like, okay, this episode I'm going to promote my giveaway. This episode I'm going to promote my book. This episode I'm going to promote my services, like whatever. But like overall, when you think about your content strategy, what is the purpose of it? Like, is it, and especially even with like guests, is it like, are you trying to bring in like higher authority guests, like notable guests, so that you get, more you're looking for more reputation, that kind of thing? Or is it, like whatever it is. So I think really focusing, getting super, super specific, not just I want to promote my business.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that you could do to promote your business. And I think also what's in it for the listeners? Like, what is the point? Like, what are they supposed to get out of it? And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to talk about like business or whatever. Then, okay, well, like, but what is it? Why are the listeners, whatever you want to say, why are the people going to listen? What are they going to get out of it? Because that's why people listen. They get something out of it. So I think, again, being super clear about that, not just like, oh, it's good business advice or whatever. Favorite way to promote a podcast. I think, again, Pinterest, especially audiograms on Pinterest, because Pinterest loves video. And so an audiogram is technically video. So I think that could be super good. I personally don't love audiograms on Instagram. I don't ever really listen to them or watch them when people post them. But that's not just, I mean, that's just my opinion. Like, I'm not saying they don't work. I personally don't like audiograms, so I don't usually use them. I don't create them for my guests. And I think it's worth surveying your audience on Instagram, because I've put up a poll for my audience and said, do you listen to audiograms? Like either in the feed or on your stories? And whenever the last time I did that, most people said no. So I was like, well, what? Then why am I doing that? So, and I know some people who are like all in on their podcast will like go live on the day of like the podcast coming out. They'll go live with the guest even and like further talk about, which I'm like, that's a lot of like, for me, it's just not feasible. Like I have clients and like, I'm like, I have enough things on my schedule. I don't need to like have a weekly Instagram live or Facebook live, but that's something else that I know a lot of people are doing, is going live the day of the podcast. But yeah, I think for me, Pinterest is really the best. And I do talk about, I know I said I don't use audiograms on Instagram, but I do get on and just talk, like just me on camera. Like, hey, this new episode with Jessica's out. We talked about SEO and all these things, etc. Like I find that more like relatable, and it's just also it's easier. Then I don't have to like take the time to go create an audiogram, if that makes sense.
No, that's true. How, like when it comes to Pinterest and podcast promoting, what kind of graphics seem to work best or seem to get, obviously it's probably the wording for them to click through, but is there something that you've noticed that tends to work better? So again, like every platform loves video. So if you can do the audiograms, but then I think just really making sure that the text is big and easy to read. A lot of people like to just put all like the details and like click here, learn more, like all that. Like they just put so much text and it's too cluttered. I also have been kind of experimenting with pictures of me with text on them, because a lot of the photos on Pinterest are just like solid color backgrounds with text on it, or it's like a stock photo of food with, whatever. And people are always drawn to other people. Like that's why on Instagram, pictures of yourself do better than a flat lay, because people are drawn to other people. So I've been kind of experimenting with that. So, and I think I don't want to say it's like, oh my gosh, out of this world, amazing. But I think it has been helping. So you might experiment with that, like maybe using a brand photo or something, and like you're somewhere in the podcast graphic that you're pinning on Pinterest. Well, let's stay on topic of Pinterest, and I know we got to wrap up soon, but when it comes to, I feel like they changed it so much. Now you can do hashtags. Now there's keywords, and that picks up for when people search. How do you fill out that bottom section underneath of when you upload your audiogram or your picture?
I usually only if I do a hashtag, it's usually like one or two. I really just keep it like I make sure like the keywords in there. So if it's like a Squarespace, video or whatever, or Squarespace podcast, like I'm not talking all about Squarespace, I'll make sure that that's in there. But it's really, I just keep it to a few sentences, kind of give context to what the episode or the video is about. And then, like I said, 1 or 2 keywords, or I mean, hashtags, not keywords, whatever term I'm trying to use. But that's generally how I do it. I haven't heard that using like tons of hashtags is really working. So I think keeping the hashtags to a minimum would be best.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
well,
good questions.
That's all I got.
I love it. So much SEO talk. I love it. I love nerding out about SEO.
I just want my business to work for me. That's like my big goal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's anybody's goal, but I think in reality, we just have to spend time doing things that do matter like that up front, so that in the end, it does. You can't get picked up by speakers or agents or whatever, in the long term.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, I'd love for you to share where we can connect with you online.
Yeah, well, we're here on a podcast wherever you're listening to this, maybe it's Spotify, wherever, but you can hop on over to the search bar and Google What's the Truth, or search What's the Truth, I should say. That's my podcast. And I love hanging on Instagram at Jessica Huddle.
Awesome. I will put the links in the show notes, but thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.